writer's life is a hard life. Everywhere you go, you get seemingly frivolous amounts of inspiration thrown your way, until it all starts adding up and throwing a party in your cluttered mess of a head. You either have too many ideas or no ideas at all, and never at the times you want. You have to meet deadlines, whether self-imposed or from a publisher breathing down your neck. And even if you are published, chances are you have 2 extra jobs to get any sort of income while writing drafts upon drafts that you sure are going to turn into the next J.K. Rowling at any moment. That's why, when I'm feeling like I'm drowning in the deluge of my own inadequacy, I venture out with my fellow partner in crime, David, meet up with people at the local pub, and play a nice, relaxing game of Mischancism.
Nice! I rolled an 11. That means all players of the Overindulgence buff must pass 3 empowerment tokens over to me, please.
Hey, what if I have 4 unproductivity cards?
Oh, then you get to pass me 5 tokens, plus 12% of your inconsequentiality coins.
Oh, man. It's a simple game. One that really clears the mind after a hard session of writing. Basically, the goal of Mischancism is to collect 17 Chaotician cards with at least 2 anarchical buffs on each bauble collectible, while obtaining 37% or more of the kleptocracy points and ensuring no one else has more than 8%. Easy stuff, nothing really to it. Really relaxes me after a frustrating day.
Donald, I notice you have 23 portions of the irregularity bonus. Could I perhaps trade your serendipity card for my insubordination one?
Yeah, sure, David. That sounds like a fair deal. That card will really help me make the most of my irregularity bonus.
Well, obviously. Alright, it's my roll! Oh, I got a 9! I'll use my totalitarianism card with that roll to give everybody the unceremonious debuff!
Really? Oh, come on!
Why would you do that to us? Now I have to divide my sanctity tokens by the rounded down number of card plays times half the number of players. Gah!
Life is hard sometimes, and more often than not leads to nothing but crap. Hence, I really need these nights when I go out and play this game. It makes me feel a sense of purpose, like I'm doing something meaningful with my time.
Your turn, Donald!
Alright, of course. Well, I'm gonna forfeit my roll, and instead play my sustenance card, buffing it with 2 pariah tokens and half of my decadence income. That gives me a Chaotician card while simultaneously upping my quizzical counter to 13%.
Excellent play, Donald.
Good move there.
Way to go, Donald! That puts you in the lead!
Of course that puts me in the lead. No need to state the obvious. A nice game of Mischancism. It's amazing how such a simple activity always lifts the spirits. The world might be a tough one sometimes, but dang it, is it worth it for times like these. You could all use a bit of a boost sometimes.
Is this another ad, Donald?
Nah, I just really like this game.
Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of The Ritwit, the show where a self-published author and his tag-along draft editor friend find every reason in the book to not talk about writing despite long plans and grand illusions of being better than you.
It's the best what we do. We're so good.
We are so good.
And you're not. Listeners. Go away, listeners. Leave us.
If you didn't need our advice, you wouldn't be listening. So obviously, we must be better than you. Cogito ergo sum.
I really need to edit the description of this podcast because it actually probably drives people away. I say it's a podcast for writers by writers. More accurately, it's for people dumb enough to think that 2 idiots are useful for listening to about when it comes to writing advice. And I'm like, maybe I should change that.
Sure, that's the problem. That's the one bugaboo.
It's the one squeaky wheel that needs greasing. I don't know. Well, last time we went on a bunch of different rants and such and different tangents, and instead that kind of interrupted the progress of what we were doing. So speaking,
although
of
in the
which,
end it helped because otherwise the episode would have been really short.
Yes, may this one be just as short for our. No.
Well, I mean, if it's well, anyway.
And maybe we could spruce it up by having these interludes every once in a while where we talk about nonsense. And speaking of which...
Interludes. AKA, as I like to call them, indulged tangents.
Oh, yes. Interludes.
So,
the fun
we started a new set
of epilogues and prologues, but in the middle.
Well, and that's the thing. Last week we talked about prologues. This week we're talking about interludes as part of our series about segments that are outside of your main story.
Right.
So, that said, I know that I am a very tangential speaker, thinker, writer, especially during the duress of Nano.
Yes.
that I tend to just follow my whims and go places. So here's my first question about interludes. How is an interlude different from some minor plot thread addressed within your story?
That is an excellent question. Let me explain to you why this is... I'm beefing up the time.
Now who's doing it? Okay, go ahead.
I mean, we're all doing it. Isn't that the fun of it? But all right. I'd like to think interludes are like an extended, broken-up prologue. You know, utilizing flashbacks that require multiple segments of the story to tell rather than just the one at the beginning, you know? I mean, there's other ways probably to write them. That's the one that sounds more interesting to me. So if I'm your only audience, use it that way.
That's true.
One of my references that uses this, I'm kind of a little embarrassed, but actually no, I'm not, because I love BIONICLE. One of the BIONICLE books did this. They would always have interludes. They would show like flashbacks of it was the original training of the Toa Mata before they got into their canisters and lost all their memories and were sent out on the Matsudui by Hydraxon. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that detailed, but, good. Given that I'm normally the one calling you the guy with the goldfish span of memory, so.
Well, I mean, I was more into... I mean, we were both pretty into BIONICLE, but I think I was in it more than you. Is that accurate?
You definitely got into it earlier than I did, that's for sure.
Yeah. You wrote more stories about it than I did, so...
Depending on what you count, because if you look at all of the comedies and stuff, I think total number you probably outdid me.
No, I don't know. Anyways, enough of this.
Why are we talking? This is a tangent.
Enough of this.
We're gonna leave it in.
Tangent. How is an interlude different from some minor plot threads addressed within your story, David?
Well, I mean, minor plot threads are just there. Actually, for long-term fans of Donald over there,
yeah,
they know that there's actually multiple versions of Megazoic, which is now published, and one of them originally had some, and literally this is the thing that was going through my mind, is when he went and did this side quest to an island called Rhea.
That's not an interlude, that's just a subplot.
That's not, but that's what I mean, though. That is a subplot, a minor plot thread.
Right,
so what's different about an interlude than that, which is just an indulged tangent, ooh, I want my character to go there, let's do it.
I mean, my writing was kind of just all over the place back then, so I guess it was kind of... I was like, this would be cool, this would be cool, this would be cool. The old Megazoics were actually a lot longer than the current ones, but by God, they were more messy.
Also, since we're mentioning it, you should check out the real version that is currently available. Buy it on Amazon.com.
Alright, 2 more.
Really? If we keep going down this road, you're going to say there's only one for the last episode of the set. Do you really want to do that to yourself?
Yes. Okay.
Anyways.
I mean, I've been doing all these ones anyways. It's not like you should worry. It's...
So, minor plot threads can be kind of fun, but obviously they derail from your story. However, I think the biggest difference, I think you or I mentioned this later down in our notes, but
yes,
if interlude probably is not using the same characters.
No.
So just throw that out there.
Well, yeah.
But anyway, let's set 2 truths that are self-evident. 1, your main story's pace should be concise.
Yes.
2,
yes,
you may have an idea you want to fulfill before continuing.
Right.
If both are true in your current project, then maybe you need an interlude. But theoretically, they're only tangential to the story. So if you will remove them from it, your main story, for the readers, unlike that ill-advised jaunt to another country between Acts 2 and 3.
Yep. Sounds good.
Like
by the
that
way,
you'd keep in because it's the same characters.
Right.
Sorry, what?
We interrupted this episode for a quick interlude where we talk about the origins of Matt Donald and Matt David training to become writers by the great master sensei of writers, not the one that's a plot ninja. Look at him. He's whipping our backs. He's like, right. Oh, do you remember that? Do you remember those times, David? It was terrible.
Yes, it was terrifying, and I'm not sure that I really benefited from his training because that training style was so harsh. Obviously, you're the more successful writer.
He wrote stories into my back by lashing them onto... This guy was Why am I a writer?
Why are you not PTSD trauma child?
Every time I hear the word writing, I just get a little jolt. That's just like... It's like, oh, my back! Oh. I'm going to do a different backstory for us throughout this episode as the interlude.
Oh, jeez. As the interlude, okay.
Don't you remember us escaping that place and then yet deciding we'd become writers? What was our escape plan? Do you remember?
What was our escape plan? Let's see. If I remember correctly, our escape plan was that we were going to woo the sensei's daughter so she would distract him for us while we escaped.
And then we found out the sensei's daughter was only 17, so we had to wait a month.
But at the time, we were only like what, 15, 16 ourselves, right? Because this is a while ago. So she was actually a little bit older, but it was completely consensual. No, I'm kidding. We didn't do anything. But our escape plan was pretty simple. We'd sweet talk her. So she would butter up to her father that we could escape so we didn't get worse scars on our backs.
And this was like on an island, like in the middle of the ocean, so we had to get a boat.
Yeah, no, I tell you what, at that time in my life, I was still in shape, so I was able to actually swim all the way back to shore. Matt kind of had to drag Donald along with me, but...
Okay, we return to the Ritwit from Interlude 1. Okay. And now we're back to us doing our podcast. If you're listening, old sensei, thanks.
Thank you for all of your very, very hard training. It obviously has left a very, very big impact on us.
It has left an impact on my back, that's for
Some
sure.
ways more literal than others.
Why did I come up with that? What is wrong with me? Let's see what I come up with next. All right, so next up, is there some sort of structure on how to best utilize these? What do you think? I'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously an interlude is something that you're introducing some concept that's becoming relevant. Like, I mean, it would be as if, for more on this, please listen to the last episode of the Ritwit. But Donald mentioned the thing about reproduction in his Megazoic book. If he had decided to, make a scene and split it into parts, kind of like you said, the broken up prologue idea.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That showed a family going through with this process.
Yeah.
That would be an interlude, right? So, it takes you out of the main story for a little bit to explain this thing. And then, of course, when you get back to the story, you hear somebody talking about how, do you remember the time that you were hatched, kind of a thing, such that it's tying it into the main thread, or something like that, So they shouldn't be very long. But if it's too short, I view that as like less than a page.
Right.
Maybe it's worth axing entirely, or addressing that concept some other way. If it's too long, like longer than a full chapter, you should save it for your encyclopedia.
Right.
If you write one.
Right, yeah.
As far as spacing out your story, though, it's not a bad thing. Ideally, they are a refreshing palate cleanser utilized sparingly, and I'm going to italicize this word sparingly, and I'm going to italicize and underline the word sparingly, and I'm going to bold this word as well, sparingly, to give breathing room.
Adding
both for you,
minute counts to this episode.
Both for you and the readers.
Yes.
Essentially, it's putting all that extra content into the main document, so I'd recommend not indulging yourself too much.
Right.
Now, keep in well, we'll talk more about like the encyclopedia type things later on, so stay tuned for that.
Why did I do that? Still recovering
Just
from
let
this.
me do it, and you edit in the
Fine,
sound.
you're right, sorry.
But anyway, yeah. So like, eventually, we'll talk about this more soon. But if you're going to write something so lengthy, maybe it belongs in a companion text.
Yes.
An encyclopedia type thing.
It belongs in a museum, sort of.
Well, I mean, you could use it as a doorstop if it's big enough. But anyway, so what about you, Donald? What do you think on the structure question?
Interludes, by their very nature, halt the pace of the story. Keep them brief. Maybe call them something different other than Chapter 7 or Chapter 12. I mean, sometimes, like I said in that BIONICLE book, I've seen them as Interlude 1, Interlude 2. Do whatever you think works. Like, I think, by the way, in case listeners are curious, the book is Swamp of Secrets. BIONICLE Legends, I believe, 10.
Wow, I barely remember reading that one.
You remember in that whole arc, the arc where they had to save Motunui from dying? So the first one was Voya Nui, and the second one was Mahri Nui. The third one was the Carta Nui.
Ah, yes.
So, Lost Island, where things were bad, underwater place, and then placed in the sky and in the swamp in the heart of the universe. Literally, as we found out later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, and there are other formatting tricks too. I think you don't always. I mean, like when I mean, this is somewhat lesser than a full interlude per se, but like whenever I change perspective in a story, particularly with Starburst, I've mentioned Starburst several times, that anytime I change perspective, POV character, I will demarcate it using some like format. Mm-hmm. Now, if you decide on a model that tells you, and eventually if you put it in print to your readers, that this is something that's not actually in the main story at all, that itself would work. You don't even need to title it per se, depending on how long it is.
Right, exactly. Okay.
So there's that too.
All right. Well, we interrupted this episode of the Rit Wit to bring you interlude number 2, which is talking about all the other professions I tried before I started writing. I tried being an actuary. I tried being a lawyer. I tried being a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker. Tried being. I tried being an equestrian. Remember the time I tried
still remember when you came home saddle sore. That was hilarious.
And that horse kicked me in the face. And then I kicked it in the butt.
It's not my fault you were so rough.
And I'm like, hey, you're a horse's ass.
Literally, you kicked it.
Yeah, and he did not like that. Let me say, I paid for that.
Well, I mean, I can't remember. Is that the reason you have the hoof mark on your chest still?
Yeah, I am like, my body tells so many stories. It's like
just about as many as your mind has.
It's like geology in here. It's like there's so many imprints and like. Remember all the professions you tried before you became a writer? Like,
yeah, there were quite a few. I tried being a stand-up comedian, but then I got rotten tomatoes thrown in my head.
All the tomatoes. To be fair, I tried it too, and I got
all
tomatoes
too.
It wasn't.
Yeah, and then there was the time that I worked as a mortician, even though I was a legal minor, and they wouldn't let me like get anywhere near the corpses. So I left that job pretty quick. Yeah, it was kind of pointless.
And so you buried
and then
that
there was the time,
didn't you?
And then there was the time that I buried the professor. What are you talking?
Buried that profession. I was trying to make a pun.
Profession. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said professor.
You killed me, David.
Well, I did nothing of the kind.
Rip this joke anyway. So.
And then there was the time that I tried being a child model because my brother actually won a beauty pageant when he was a kid. So my mom thought it would be really good for me to try.
And then inevitably you lost due to the swimsuit round. Made you.
This is before I met you, actually. This is way back.
Oh,
then.
yeah, I think I remember reading this on your website.
Yeah, and then there was the time I tried being a sports blogger, and that went approximately nowhere because nobody was reading them except for me. And
I tried being a lingerie model once.
Why would you do that? You don't have the right body type for it.
Oh, I know that now.
Which is
David.
which is why you Oh, and then there was the time that I tried being an actor because in freshman year of high school I took a theater class.
Oh, yeah.
And that year we did this project called Fractured Fairy Tales.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me about
that. And in that role I ended up cross-dressing.
Nice.
And I ended up getting scolded / laughed at by my mother because I was wearing this one-piece dress, right?
Yeah.
And we had this choreography in the dance scene of that number that we got called for a shimmy. Now I'm not very good at shimmying naturally, anyways. But at the time, I was still fit. I was still playing baseball.
Hot stuff.
I thought about aiming for the minor leagues, but I never got that far.
You made some people question their sexuality that night.
Not what I was going for. So when I went down for the shimmy, the dress was hanging loose enough that my mom, who was sitting near the back of the auditorium, said she was able to see straight down the dress.
And that's why you're not an actor. Okay.
She's like, you don't have the chest for it, and I was so ashamed that I stopped entertaining dreams of being an actor.
Right. I can imagine. But then I was like, okay, finally I've decided I want to be a writer. Ooh, there's this great sensei that I could go to this island for, and then I took you along with me. Wasn't that great?
Yeah, because at that point we were already thicker than thieves and decided that we wanted to try something mutually as opposed to this random grab bag of various careers that all panned out so well, Donald. Anyways, we are now going back to the Ritwit.
Return to the Ritwit. Okay. Oh god, I have to come up with another one. I have two more to come up with. Oh no.
Why do we
This
need
will test
two
my
more?
improv creativity. Okay. I mean, I don't know why I say that. This is all history. But this all actually happened.
This all actually happened as we said it, even if it contradicts itself. Anyways.
Right.
Next question about interludes then.
Mm-hmm.
Do they really belong in your draft at all?
I say no, but feel free to prove me wrong. Like, I've seen it used in cool ways in certain books, like that BIONICLE book, and I'm sure there are others that I just don't remember. It's just a big dork, and I'm thinking about my job.
Well, and for a writer, knowing you haven't really been doing too much reading, that there may not be a bunch of examples. But, like, this is not even limited to books.
Right.
This could be in games, this could be in movies. Well, presumably it wouldn't be in many movies because of the very nature of a movie. When you're limited on time, you're probably not telling something this...
I mean, sometimes there are movies that are like Batman Begins has a lot of flashbacks.
Well, it has to.
So, and also Man of Steel. Man of Steel has a lot of flashbacks throughout the whole story. Those could be kind of considered interludes.
Well, if it's a flashback and it's part of your main... So here's... Sorry, the random question that brings up.
Yeah.
Are flashbacks equivalent to interludes?
I mean, it depends.
Flashbacks are expressly designed to explain something that previously happened to frame the story that's happening properly.
I think they can be
really
absolutely.
An interlude?
I'm just saying, like, in terms of a movie example, like Man of Steel, all the different times he went back to his Clark's childhood about certain things he learned and such. I'd call those interludes.
Had to focus on what he was listening to, so he didn't get overwhelmed by all the sounds that were out there he could hear.
Right, or like
I mean,
or like the times the bullies told him to fight back and he chose not to because he didn't want to destroy them.
Because he would absolutely wreck them. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and this is the thing. Like, again, I said earlier, and I think it's still later on that we were saying something about this. Like, if it's not the same characters, it's an interlude. Maybe if instead of going back to Clark's childhood, it was John Kent, or excuse me, is his name John?
Yeah, it's Jonathan Kent. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to remember because there's another comic character, John Kent. I think it's actually Superboy, like the son of.
He could have named it after his father.
No. Well, he could have. I don't recall. There are a bunch of different versions because
we definitely know that his mom is named Martha. That's very important.
It becomes very important later. No, but anyway, so if it instead of going to Clark's childhood, it had gone to like John building a family before the baby Kal-El showed up,
and if they figured out some way to make it important.
That would be an interlude. Well, I mean, and that's the thing though, is that in movie format, it will be done with flashbacks.
Right.
But they're not really... My argument is they're not really the same as interludes because they are going to involve the same character.
Right. Well, I don't know if that necessarily discludes them. This counts.
Fair. Excludes.
Yeah,
is
you're
the word
right.
looking
I'm
for,
sorry.
I
I'm a
believe.
writer. I need to know these words. These basic words.
Well, they have a similar purpose, absolutely. Like, they're used to flesh out something that helps you understand the current story better. And so where you put those flashbacks, where you put this interlude in the flow of your story, in the flow of the film, that's really important.
Yeah.
That said, there are a couple of different ways to do this. And, we've talked about a couple of them already now, but it feels like a flashback using the same character. I wouldn't really classify that as an interlude so much, but it does happen in the same place. Like, it's going to interrupt your main story, like this would. So, anyway, sorry, that was a random.
I suppose, but I don't know. I kind of disagree. But that's the different thing about being human. We all got different opinions, and
and you say something else on your notes about breaking the flow.
Right? Yeah, no, definitely. Like the interludes can sometimes they can definitely run the risk of doing that. So,
like they run the risk of becoming
superfluous and superfluous.
Well, superfluous
yeah.
too. Yeah.
So,
as far as I'm concerned, like, if you want a tightly plotted story from cover to cover, absolutely not. They do not belong in your draft.
Yeah, I'd say so.
If you don't mind rambling on something that will provide just enough info for the next scene or has later relevance, then maybe it's acceptable.
Right.
After all, if you made an encyclopedia, and again, we'll talk about it yet.
I'm really gearing up for that one.
Only the hardest of core fans will buy that doorstop encyclopedia.
Yes.
So,
We'll
not everybody's going to read it unless you put it in the story
Right.
somehow. Like, if instead of having it at the beginning of this final book in the Megazoic series, he puts it in the middle, then it would become an interlude.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Okay. All right, so what about you? Do you think interludes belong in your draft at all? Well, you said that already, didn't you? I'm sorry.
Just to reiterate,
I'm listening.
The cover-to-cover story. You're too busy inventing the next interlude, aren't you?
I wish that was it, but I'm actually playing a game on my phone.
So professional.
I'm putting it away. I take this podcast seriously, listeners.
Yeah, obviously. So the interlude has a place.
Yes.
Under the right circumstances, it has a place.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think most writers have those circumstances in effect in their story.
Right.
Like, I've seen far more people try to do an interlude to do something cool as a break than it would be absolutely necessary.
Right. Okay. Well, all right. Well, we interrupted this program, this episode of the Ritwit, to give you interlude number 3. This time going into the future, the far, far future, and our great-great-grandchildren are just now learning about their great-great-grandfathers as writers. Oh, can you imagine this scene? The kids are looking through their hollow books, sitting on their hoverboards.
Looking through their hollow books at our earliest works and laughing at just how bad we were. And then they look at the stuff you publish later and just realize how amazing we got.
Yes.
Thanks in part to this podcast.
Yes. They go out, they look out the window and see all the flying cars that we'll definitely have someday.
That we'll absolutely have. That will be driverless because,
that's true.
Awesome.
That's true, but
our great-great-grandchildren will never need a driver's license. They will be able to get into a robot taxi and just fly with their hover car.
I mean, have you seen the stuff that Tesla's doing? I feel like just our children will be able to do that.
Wait, why Tesla? That makes no sense.
Like Elon Musk, the Tesla car.
Tesla. Okay, sorry, Tesla company.
Yeah,
car.
No, that's right.
Sorry, I thought you were referring to the original, Nikola Tesla. I'm like, what the heck does that have anything to do?
I mean, he named him off of that. He was inspired by him, but yeah. No,
correct.
Okay. Actually, I don't really have much else to say for this interlude. Just they look through the hollow books to look at their ancestry, and the robot shows them, what their ancestors are like. And I'd like to imagine that
they get to see all of the things that we did not mention in our What We at the Ritwit have once writ episode.
Right. You know, I don't even know why I'm saying
because
this.
it's
I don't
all
think I'm
there.
gonna.
So they get to actually.
I don't know why I'm saying this. I'm not even gonna have kids. I'm not planning on having kids. My great nephew. Okay.
Don't rule it out.
We've returned to the episode of the Rit Wit. I gotta come up with a better one for the final one. Come on, this is making this episode fun. Come on, you gotta admit.
I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just laughing. Determining the difference between filler and fully important in regards to your story.
Make sure it's important. Don't have interludes for no reason. Give them a purpose. Something that's standard prologue, which even then you gotta justify its reason for existing. Right. But something that doesn't provide. If all you're doing is changing the perspective in your story that's normally first person or third person limited, maybe just change them to make them regular chapters and change your story to third person omniscient.
Sure.
That's what I think.
Well, and filler in itself is that subplot that you're going on a quest for next to no reason, just delaying the climax because you want to hit a page number.
Like Rhea in the old Megazoic.
And that's what I was thinking of,
Yeah, good job.
If it's describing a mechanic that is going to have relevance, like if it's introducing characters that are about to show up and become relevant suddenly, and we've never seen them before, and it's giving enough background, then that might be worth putting in. That's fully important to your story, right?
Right, yeah.
Because they're about to impact it. But, I believe this comes back to the motivations you have when writing the segment itself.
Yes.
If the idea germ is, I should explain how this works, or what happened, before they read about it, it's probably okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there are other variants as well, but those are the two big ones. Some past event or some, mechanism of the world you're in, or creating, I should say. If the idea stems from, I want my characters to go on this little side quest before they handle the climax, it might be filler.
Possibly, yeah.
It might just possibly be filler. Like, if you're doing that as a means of simply getting them out, exploring more of your world, is it really necessary to this plot you're telling? I mean, okay, if they go there, I keep coming back to Rhea, not to pick on Donald.
That's okay. Pick away. It deserves it.
It's a concrete example that I remember that most listeners probably won't understand anyway. But we'll go with it.
Might as well.
So the cast decides to make this trip to this, I believe it was uninhabited island, right?
It was uninhabited, but then this company was like, let's make mutant dinosaurs and make it a zoo. Because we'll totally make a zoo with mutant humans someday, right?
Yeah, that sounds exactly like what we're going to do. But it's called the Freak Show at the carnival. Anyway,
oh God.
Sorry,
that's okay.
Too easy. Anyway, so they go there and they think it's uninhabited. They're just going and the reason that Donald wrote this was literally because he wanted to explore more of the world.
Yes,
but it served literally no purpose in the story. Now, maybe if Rhea had something like some item that would power up the main device they use to thwart the villain's final plan, it would have some merit.
It didn't, though.
But he didn't think about this.
Nope. But it sure added like 50,000 words to the story. So.
Well, and I'm not going to say that the adventure they had on Rhea was that uninteresting. It was quite fun.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a reason he wanted to write it.
Yeah.
But indulging that tangent only adds pages that don't serve your plot. And so why is it there?
Right.
Like, maybe in the same episode we talk about encyclopedias, we need to talk about, short stories. That would have been a perfect short story.
Yeah.
Outside of the main narrative. Not in the same dang book.
Yeah, well.
Anyways.
I was a high school writer. I was having fun.
And there's nothing wrong with having fun. I mean, obviously, when you're writing, it's because you want to do it because it is fun.
Right.
If it's not, then maybe you should consider stopping.
Yes.
Just throwing it out.
Of course. Anyways.
But keep supporting writers. Keep reading books. Reading is good for you.
Right.
Anyway, if it's the same characters, that filler might not qualify as an interlude. It would just be filler.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So Rhea, literally, all I can call it is filler. It's not an interlude. It's literally a tangent that he indulged himself on, and they went and wasted how many pages? I don't even remember now.
But surely there's other examples,
on
right?
this meaningless side quest. In your writing, there's not, because you've been very good about it.
Thank you. That's very nice of you.
We've grown up. At least that I remember. Semi-related determinant to whether it's filler or fully important. If the point of view character changes, the perspective character changes, it's more likely an interlude than just some whim.
Right.
So, like, going back to if it was Clark's father as opposed to Clark. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't automatically guarantee it has value to the book it's encompassed in.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If it has no value to the book that it's encompassed within, if it doesn't have some benefit to the book within that cover, then it probably does not need to be there. And just saying that it's there because you want it to be there does not guarantee it has that value.
Absolutely not. Sounds good. All right, well, we interrupted this episode of the Ritwit for Interlude 4. One day, the two of us were just walking along the street when suddenly, up out in space, a giant face looked upon the Earth and said, "People of Earth, I will destroy the world unless you show me your finest example of writing." And this is when you and we had to step up.
Yes.
I was like, "David, we gotta go. We gotta go show them our writing. This is our chance to be heroes. This could prove to the world why we're meant to be writers."
Exactly. And so we looked through some of our old ads to try and find, like, the best one.
I took out the Rhea segment of Megazoic, and then this was back when I was writing that.
Oh, this is all the way back. Oh, yes, of course.
This is when we decided we had to be writers.
So many events have gone by that I've tended to forget some of the smaller details.
Yes, mass panic was ensuing all around the Earth. We were people were creating religions around this sky face.
Yes, and I went to the theater to grab a film reel of Iron Man because it was like the greatest superhero movie of all time at the time.
Oh, you didn't have faith in your own writing. You had to get other people's writing.
Because I was the only one who considered that Iron Man would have the kind of cachet that he was looking for.
What idiot you were!
And so along with showing him my fully finalized version of the BIONICLE Power Rangers crossover fic and Donald's Rhea excerpted Rhea-less Megazoic, we showed him Iron Man to show that comic books were a fertile ground for creativity.
I might have shown him
our amazing minds.
I might have shown him Bionicle Legends 10 Swamp of Secrets.
Which showed that we can do interludes properly and showed him that we are masters of the form on Earth, and therefore, very kindly, would you please not destroy all this wonderful, wonderful, high-quality, undoubtedly amazing writing that we have to share with the universe.
And so we did, and then he was like, "I am satisfied," and then disappeared.
And then we knew that we had to be writers.
I mean, to be fair,
it took us way too many years to get into the podcast game, knowing that major cataclysmic level event happened.
To be fair, there are probably millions of writers who showed him their own stuff. We can't just credit it to us, but we'd like to think it was just us.
We'd like to think we were the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yes. Anyways, we returned to the Ritwits. Boom, I did it. 4 interludes on the spot. None of this was in our plans for this episode, listeners. You are welcome.
So professional. No, that was quite amusing.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for this week. Is that it for this week?
Well, I mean, I suppose. We talked a little bit about flashbacks as well, which I actually didn't expect to talk about, but flashbacks and interludes, they all have the same kind of thing, that they're usually best used for background, right?
Right.
if they don't add value to what you're doing, you shouldn't have them in. So filler should be removed for something else.
Yes.
Even if you're shooting for a certain page count. I remember, random story, listeners, about another tale that Donald has written called Wildlife of Tomorrow.
Oh my God, you're just
this.
dragging on all my books now.
Hey, you have books to drag out. That's actually a good thing, right?
I suppose that's true.
And with when computer technology is changing and word processing software goes haywire, sometimes the spacing of your books.
Oh right.
Sometimes the spacing of your books is a very precious thing. This was back when, trying to use just standard the default options in word processing software got him through this sequel to the original Wildlife of Tomorrow. So Wildlife of Tomorrow 2, The Ancestral Continent.
And again,
McAnimal's Revenge, was it?
Again, we have another episode where we talk about Wildlife of Tomorrow, but we still haven't explained what it is.
Gotta keep that streak going.
Yep.
Well, I mean, come on. How much more do we need to explain? Wildlife of Tomorrow.
That could mean anything.
It's more of a far off tomorrow. It's more of a far off tomorrow than tomorrow, but anyway.
It could be about the gazelles at my outside that don't do anything today, but tomorrow they do something.
It could be the toucans you saw when you visited the Caribbean. I don't know. Anyway,
toucans aren't in the Caribbean, or maybe they are. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Hold on, let me Google this. I don't care.
So professional. Anyway. So Wildlife of Tomorrow 2, he had this document all done up and everything and nice, and there just happened to be a little extra space between every single line because he didn't format it the same way he'd formatted the original.
Right.
And so by the time that I showed him how to fix the formatting, he fell below his certain page threshold, and he was so mad about that.
Yeah, because suddenly it wasn't over 50,000 words anymore.
No, the word count doesn't change, Dom.
No, I know, but it was no longer over 100 pages, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say the word count never changed.
Yeah, I guess it's
the spacing between them the page count did. And so the reason I bring this up, and I pick on Donald because I care a great deal about him and we've been friends for a long time.
Right.
Obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this podcast together. But if you're aiming to get to a certain page count, then having things like the RIA side quest, having things like accidental formatting getting you over 100 pages, it's all fine and dandy, but don't do it just to have the page count, because some things change. If he had turned it into a book format, it would have been over 100 pages. I'm well aware of that now after watching him process four different versions of 4 books, from Megazoic.
Right.
Although he has more than 4 versions too. But interludes need to have a reason for existing. Same with prologues. We mentioned that in the last episode too.
Right.
And probably we'll repeat it when we talk about the next part of this as well. But if they don't have a reason beyond page count, then it's probably not worth it.
Right. No, I definitely say so.
So keep that in mind.
Anyways.
Listeners.
Yes.
When you're in your own writing. With that all said, I don't think there's anything else in the middle that is out of a narrative that we need to talk about. So I think we can move away from this topic and get ready for next week's episode.
Yes.
So that's it for this week.
Yes, that's it for this week. Contact us at mattt@methodologicreator.com. It's 2 T's before the D at Matt D. Blah. Okay.
Matt T.
Yes. For any general questions
Mad
to either
T.
co-host.
Absolutely.
Follow me.
Please specify which one.
Yes, please specify which one.
Appreciate
that.
it.
Send us fan mail. We will read it if you want us to, or
if you want us to
just
share
reply
on the air, we will do that. So,
if you want to follow me personally, follow me at Matthew Donald Creator on Facebook, at Matthew Donald 64 on Twitter, and Matthew Donald 64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because that's how many times I misspelled my own name, like Matt 2 T's and then another T, as I was typing it into Twitter for the first time. I'm a real idiot sometimes, David.
You have your moments. I also have mine.
Anyways.
So it's okay. Anyways.
So,
thanks for listening to The Ritwit, with a show where us two twits.
Toucans are not native to the Caribbean. They're native all throughout Mexico, Central and South America, but they are not in the Caribbean. So, boom.
I thought about saying toucans in Cancun because of some tongue twister, but I wasn't sure if it was right.
Anyway,
moving on.
I'm Matt Donald.
I'm Matt David.
Okay. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening, listeners. Until then, keep writing.
Keep writing.
The Ritwit.